Today, we're smoking brisket, one of my favorites. I have a nice piece of brisket flat here. It's not a full brisket. A full brisket has the point as well. The point is a lot fattier, and that's where you'll get your burn ends from. But we're just going to go with the flat today. And it's a choice cut of meat, which I wanted to get a prime, but they didn't have any available at my local Sam's Club. So I went with the choice cut, and that's going to be good either way. But what we're going to want to do first is get rid of some of the hard fat that's not going to render off as we cook it. So I'm going to start doing that. As you can see here, if you see a big chunk like this, just get rid of it. This can be intimidating, trimming a brisket. I'm not a professional. I struggle sometimes with it too. Just do the best you can. It'll be okay. As long as you get off a lot of the hard, thick fat, it's okay to leave a lot of the thinner fat because it's going to render off. And especially with a lean cut like a flat is, some of the thin fat you want on there because it's going to make it juicy and as it renders. So you just want to try to get anything you think will not render off. So I'll do the meat side here, and then we'll take a look at the sides. I can already tell there's some I'm going to have to cut away. And we'll look at the fat side. And now the fat side, if it's really thick, we're going to want to thin it out. But, okay, here we go. On the sides, look at that. Big piece of just fat that will not render. Just get rid of it. And as you can see, there's still some more. And if you cut a little bit into the meat, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's more important to get rid of this. And like I said, I'm not a professional at this. You could leave a comment below if you're good at trimming brisket, and you can let me know if I did something wrong or I could do it a little better. I'm making this video because I enjoy smoking briskets and all kinds of barbecue. And if you have any tips for me, I'll gladly take them. But I do know you want to get rid of that hard fat. So that's what you want to do. And you kind of want to make it symmetrical around to the degree of you don't want anything just hanging off because it will burn. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it around. And as you can see right here at the end, it's just hard fat once again. That's not going to render anything. And the grains of the brisket, you're going to want to, when it's all done, you're going to want to slice it. With rub and everything on it, you're not going to be able to tell where the grain is. You want to go against the grain. So if you cut a little notch out, like I'm doing here at the bottom after I get this fat off, I'll know by that little notch that the grain is running up and down, and I want to take my knife at the end and go that way with it. So I'm going to go ahead, and I see a little more I don't like here, but this is just thin fat. I'm kind of being nitpicky. It's not a big deal if you leave a little thin fat on there. It's really not. You just want to make sure you get all the hard fat off. And on the back side, the fat cap side, what you're going to want to look for as we flip this over and take a look, you want it about 1/4 inch thick. It's pretty good to me. It might be a little more in some places, but it's very close, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it since it's just the flat and not the point. It's going to protect it as I cook it, and it's going to make sure that the brisket stays nice and moist. I'm going to also inject it today. I'm going to use some bone broth, and I'm going to put a little bit of this in there, and then I'm going to add a little bit of Cajun butter. I'm going to mix it together. This is a step you don't need to do if you choose not to. This is the first time I've ever injected one, and it turned out well, but I've done this before without injecting them, and they also turn out well. So if you just want a little added flavor, go ahead and do this. Like I said, I'm not putting a lot of this in there, just putting a little, and I'm going to mix it up and just inject it real good before I rub it. I'm going to inject it as the grain of the meat runs. I've heard this is the way you should do it. Now, to tell you the truth, I don't know if that's true or not, but since I've heard someone that seemed to know what they were talking about say that, I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. If you have done it either way and you know this to be true or not true, just let me know down below. But I'm just going to go with it. So I'm going to inject it with the grain. All right, now that I have it injected, I'm going to put the rub on. Today, I'm going to be using Meat Church's Holy Cow. It's really good for any kind of beef. And I like it the best I've tried so far on brisket. Any brisket I've made, the Holy Cow versus anything else, I prefer. But put whatever you want on. If you're doing a traditional Texas brisket, you're going to want to just put coarse salt and pepper, maybe a little garlic. But for me, Holy Cow is the best. So I'm going to put a lot on each side and on the edges because it's a big piece of meat and it can take it. So put on as much as you like. And after that, we'll get the pit going and get this thing on there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get these coals lit. Takes about 20 minutes or so before they're fully ready to go. I got some coals already in the fire box, so when these are lit and I throw them in there on top, they'll catch the other ones and it'll keep the fire going longer and hotter. I also have a water pan and a pan down below to catch the drippings from the brisket. And I'm going to be using post oak today as my wood source. All right, I got the fire going. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close down the pit, get it up to temp, and then we're going to get that brisket on. All right, so it's time to get that brisket on. Got the pit up and running to the proper temperature. I'm running at about 250, 275. And I'm going to take and put this right in the middle. That way I can get an accurate temperature. It's not on either end. And once I get it to the temperature I like, which is around 155, 160, I'm going to take it off and wrap it. And it's almost there. As you can tell by the bark, I've been spraying it. And if you want a thicker bark, you don't have to spray it as much as I did, but I wanted to keep it real moist. So it's almost ready to pull off. All right. So I'm doing something completely different today too. I normally put it in butcher paper, but I'm going to do aluminum foil in a pan today, and I'm going to add the mixture I made to inject it at the bottom. And then I'm also going to put a little bit more of the bone broth in there as well. And after you do this, you're going to want to wrap it up real tight so it doesn't, if it's loose, it'll steam more and the bark won't hold up as well. That's why a lot of people use butcher paper, because the bark will stay a lot better. But for the way I'm doing this flat today, I'm using aluminum foil, putting the liquid at the bottom, and I'm going to wrap it real tight. All right, once you get it real tight, you want that oven on 300 because it's wrapped, and you can do it a little more than what you had it on the smoker. And I'm putting it in the oven instead of keeping it on smoker to save on fuel. I'm not burning wood that I don't need to burn because either way it's going to cook the same way once you wrap it. So I'm using the oven, 300 degrees, and I'm going to put a probe in the middle of two different sides here, the ends, I should say, close to the middle of it, but two different areas so I can get a good reading of when I need to pull this out, because I want to pull her out between 200, 205, depending on what they both say. So we're going to put it in and just go by temperature, not time. All right, it's been in there. It went off, and one of them is reading 203 and the other is reading 210. So it's definitely ready to come off. 205 to me would be perfect. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick it in the cooler. I'm going to leave it in there for an hour and a half, and I'm going to put a towel on top and cover it, and then shut the door. And that is going to allow the juices to absorb back into the meat as it rests. And this is a crucial part of the process. It's been an hour and a half, so let's take it out and see how it is. All right, it's nice and tender. The crust is still, the bark is still nice on there, even though I had it wrapped in aluminum and I sprayed it a lot during the cook, which you don't normally spray it as much as I did, but I wanted to keep it real moist. So let's cut and see what it looks like. Oh, beautiful smoke ring. That post oak and smoking it on a stick burner, man, makes a big difference compared to a pellet grill. You can get a little smoke ring on a pellet grill, but it's nothing like a stick burner. Nice and moist. I'm not going to cut the whole thing because I'm actually eating this tomorrow, serving it tomorrow. But I'm going to cut it halfway through just to see how we did towards the middle. Oh, wow. Look how nice and juicy that is. And it's tender. I'm going to cut a piece off here, and I'm going to try it. Also, what you do is when you put it on your knife like this, and it bounces, and it doesn't break, but it bends like that, that's perfect. Man, it's nice and juicy. And it still has texture to it where it doesn't just crumble apart. Oh, it's very juicy, very smoky flavored, but not over smoked. It's very good. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a different way of smoking one than I've ever done before. Like I said, injecting it and putting it in an aluminum foil pan. But it worked out really well. I'm definitely doing this again. So please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below.